Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. Today we're joined by Isaac Jang, the masterful luthier behind Isaac Jang guitars. Over the past decade, Isaac Jang has become one of the most admired and respected names in modern lutherie. Known for his thoughtful craftsmanship and humility, Isaac blends technical mastery with a genuine sense of warmth and purpose, values shaped by his Korean culture, his mentors, and communities that supported him along the way. After discovering the guitar through a church praise band as a teenager, Isaac's obsession quickly became a calling. He trained at the Gallup School of Guitar Building, apprenticed for 10 years with renowned luthier Kathy Wingert, and worked alongside legends like Fred Wilecki at Westwood Music. His work as both a builder and repair technician, as well as his years teaching at the Musicians Institute in Hollywood, laid the foundation for a solo career defined by elegance, restraint, and musicality. Isaac's instruments reflect a philosophy that values clarity, playability, and the subtle art of refinement. But for Isaac, guitar making is more than wood and tone. It's about service, intention, and the pursuit of excellence, even when no one is watching. Through his work and through his lens as the guitar world's unofficial documentarian, he continues to give back to the community that shaped him. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Isaac Jang, and I hope that you do as much as I did. Isaac,
Hi,
welcome to
Jamie.
Life with Strings Attached.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are
Yeah,
you?
at a disadvantage. I have no idea what your shirt says.
It says a Matsuda guitar.
Does it? Come on, does it really?
Yeah, it's Michi's new T-shirt that he gave me during NAM.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so gotta represent.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How are things there in Southern California?
Oh, it's much better than several weeks ago. So
Yeah.
things are, we had some rain and looks like the air is cleared up quite a bit, and it's a nice. My shop is around 68 right now,
Hmm.
so it's pretty comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And
Mhm.
were you much affected by the fires? Did it get very close to you, or
It
your
got
home or your workshop?
it got close enough that we had a lot of smokes around, and my
Hmm.
shop was a little bit closer, but we're in a more of a highly developed areas here, so it wasn't we didn't have as much like trees or forest around just
Hmm.
immediately. But a
Hmm.
lot of my friends and they all some of the friends actually lost their home,
Hmm.
but I think they're all in the recovery process right now. So it is just still like a sad and crazy situation that's happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never quite know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but everyone made it through, and you guys are all right. Your family's okay. All that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for
Good.
asking.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
something to be thankful for. It's strange.
Mhm.
I think people struggle with the idea of being thankful
Mhm.
when other people had loss, but yet
Mhm.
I think you can still be grateful
Yeah.
for your circumstances. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. So, okay. So what's been going on down there since the NAM show? We saw you there a few weeks ago, where you got your new T-shirt. Apparently,
Yes. I got
yeah.
my new t-shirt, and right after NAM, I've been working on these guitars for clients, and then I had
Hmm.
to add one more just right after NAM, getting ready for Sound of Messe in May.
Yeah.
So sort of now I got one more in the loop and just working through it. Yeah.
Yeah. You sound. You don't sound calm about that. You sound a little stressed out.
There's always like a lot of going on here. So you can already see a lot of the shavings that I've made in the top, and yeah, just been working. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you? I mean, you've been doing this a long time now. Have you found your uh, work-life balance?
Working on it, and last sometime last year I had to sort of switch my gear, and instead of working 18 hours a day, I'm sort of down to like 8 or 9 hours a day, because I
Hmm.
have a young child. Holly just turned 4, and I want to spend more time with family, so I've
Hmm.
been shifting my hours towards more like the earlier part of the morning till late afternoon, and then just call it a day, but have a productive, solid, 8, 9 hours, and then sort of schedule things a little bit more, plan it ahead a little bit more.
Mhm.
So that's the change that I've been making, and it's taking some time to adjust it, but I feel much better now.
Are
Yeah.
are you a morning person? Do you naturally work better in the morning,
No,
or no?
not at
Opposite?
all.
Okay.
Yeah, once the sun sets, I'm just like, "Wing."
Okay.
Yeah, and
That's
I
when
can
you
just
wake
go
up.
on. Yeah, and I can just go on, but I'm getting used to it now, so it's at least as my child grows up, I could probably get used to that for a while.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm the opposite. I'm not a late
Mm,
night person at all. As a matter of fact,
mm.
this morning I was up at like 2:30 in the morning, brain going, and I got up and went to work. I've been up since I guess 11:30 your time p.m.
Wow.
last night. I just
Dang.
started to think about certain things, and then I head to my whiteboard in my office, or I
Uh,
start doing the work or doing the research. There's been a lot of talk lately about legacy and succession and
mhm,
people thinking about what that's going to look like in the future. And
mm.
so my brain got going on legacy and succession this morning, and then I went
Wow.
deep into research and
Mhm.
thinking about solutions. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Do you think much about that? You're
Mm. Uh, Sometimes, these days I'm just sort of focusing on the present and
mhm,
sort of, the future part of it, but like not to that extent. But I also believe that passing on knowledge is important. And, especially during my teaching years at Musicians Institute, I spent a lot of time teaching and trying to passing on the knowledge as much as I could. But that also took away a lot of my sort of focus level. So now that I'm doing full-time making only, I'm sort of trying to stay on top of that first before I could sort of think about that extent of the future.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
It might just be the fact that I'm the age that I am and the experience that I am, and it's mainly people who are a bit older than I am. I'm just shy of 50 at this point in time,
Wow.
and I have lots of friends in the business who are
Mhm.
you know 60, 70, and they're really thinking about
Mm.
legacy and the future and what's going on there, and making sure that their particular skill set is somehow passed on, like you said,
Mhm.
passing on the knowledge. And
Yeah.
it's important, and I don't think it's a problem for me to say this out loud, but people
Mhm.
like with companies like Santa Cruz, like Richard Hoover,
Mhm.
Richard was telling me that he's the only one who sorts the wood still. So he's
Mm.
the one who says this is the wood we're building with here. But
Right.
Richard's not a spring chick anymore, and they should probably be teaching someone else how to select the wood.
Yeah,
For
it's tough because I mean a lot of our sort of work is uh, sort of one person operation, and that's sort of the nature of it. And I think I know I have to think about the legacy aspect of it at some point, but right now what I'm focusing on is just doing my best work now, and
Mhm,
then
mhm.
that would naturally sort of flow into legacy in itself because I don't know if any other big companies with legacy now really thought that aspect of their work
Yeah,
during the time that they had made the oldest golden era instruments.
yeah,
So, I'm just trying to focus on just making the best guitars I could now, and hopefully that will sort of somehow, show as part of the legacy. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's fair enough. You're
Mhm.
not exactly young anymore, but you're also not old. You're in that you're
Right.
well experienced, but you're not an old man yet. You're in that
Yeah.
space in between. And so,
Mhm.
you know what? Why don't we take things back a little bit, Isaac? You
Mhm.
mentioned your time at Musician Institute and stuff. For our guests who
Mhm.
may not know your whole life story,
Mhm.
let's. Would you mind just sort of taking us back to sort of the beginning and the moments that you think
Mhm.
if we took that moment away that maybe you
Mm,
wouldn't be the Isaac Jang that we know today? Starting from, like family
sure.
on up, not every moment of your life, just the
Uh-huh.
ones that I said that are you think were significant that lead to who you are now.
Of course. And I have some because I came, I had an immigration background.
Mm-hmm.
I've came from Korea, and I think those are some of the sort of the sort of checkpoints in my life that I can
Mm-hmm.
sort of almost pinpoint to. And
Yes.
I came to America when I was 12 years old with my family, just my parents, my younger brother, and like sort of the American dream. That's when
Yeah.
we had the
So
recession.
two parents and one brother. You had a life
Yes.
in Korea, South Korea,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes,
For
correct.
12 years.
Uh-huh.
Then you came to America.
Yes, and that was just right at the end of 99
Mm-hmm.
when the South Korea just experienced the whole economic recession.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the better life, we literally came to America with just a few luggages, and that was it. Like nothing, everything was left behind home. And yeah, I was just 12 years old. I was all excited to come to America, thinking it would be like this beautiful sort of like upstate New York type of vibe, or like Boston, I don't know. And then I come and the palm trees and just being LA is like a completely different scene. I had no idea. So that was sort of like a shock for me. And, I didn't really have any musical background. None of my family really did. And I think the point where I got to experience the guitar in itself was going to my local church because that's had a praise band. And I just saw, oh, that's a guitar, cool. I just wanted to learn how to play it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with it. When all my friends were playing basketball and soccer, I just held the guitar and just was trying to working on the scale and doing all of this work. And when I so I started playing guitar when I was in around like seventh grade, which I think I was like maybe 15 or 16 years old. Um, and then when I moved up to high school, in Palisades High School, which actually had a fire impact, just from the Palisades fire.
Mm-hmm.
But that school, we had a guitar class, and the teacher who I met, his name is Terry Henderson, and he was just like amazing teacher. And I just fell in love with playing guitars, and he was left-handed, so it was easy for me to learn, mirrored.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the actual spark of fire, the sparking the fire of a guitar in itself was from him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be around guitars regardless of I stayed as a guitar player or somebody who was working on guitars. I just wanted to be around. So I stuck 4 years with him. And then during my first year at college, I was gonna study, of course, something else because music wasn't gonna be part of my choice at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was still so obsessed with guitars, so I was
Mm-hmm.
just doing all my research and found out about lutherie, guitar making. So I reached out to a lot of the local guitar makers, trying to do all my research. And one of the people that I just saw and stuck with me was Kathy Wingert, who happened to be maybe like at 45 to an hour away from my area.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, sent out an email saying, "Hi, my name is Isaac. I am just finished high school. I am trying to be guitar maker or guitar stuff, and can I come study with you?" And of course, she was like, "No." I had no space and time to train somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and she basically gave me three advices, saying that, well, if you want to really do this, if you're serious about this, then you have to have gone to guitar making school because there are, quite a few out there, and have built guitars. At least have a first or two guitars, and then secondly, the repair is a very important part of guitar making. Learning to do good setup, good finish work is vital. So you have to be working in a repair shop. And thirdly, like, you're just 18. Like, what are you doing? Like, I have children just like your age. You need to be in school. You're too young to not have a backup plan. I said, oh, okay. And I took a break from first year of college, and I started to serve in the restaurant, saved up money for tuition, and I went to Brian Gallup School, had
Mm-hmm.
built two guitars, and then came back. found a repair shop position at a repair shop in Hollywood,
Hmm.
and then enrolled back into college to study business management.
Hmm.
And I reached out to Kathy about 10 months to a year later. And I said, "Hey, my name is Isaac. I don't know if you remember me, but I've reached out to you about a year ago and you gave me these advices. And I have built my first guitar and then working in a repair shop. I'm back into college. I would like to just get your feedback
Hmm.
and to see what you think." So she said, "Okay, fine." I showed up to her door and she looked at the guitar and she asked if I had time to work for her. And I was like,
Hmm.
"What?" So that's how my 10-year apprenticeship started with Kathy.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
on her side of the story, when she received a phone call, her daughter Jimmy asked her after the phone we hung up, and she said, "Hey, mom, what's wrong?" And she said, "Mm, I think we just got an apprentice." So that's my biggest sort of I guess checkpoint in my career is having to of course going to school to make guitars, but
Yeah.
having that apprenticeship started with Kathy,
Hmm.
the mentor whom I
Yeah.
could just forever grateful for,
Yes.
and
And you went to the Gallup School,
I did.
which is in the America you thought you were coming to, the northern with trees and regular
Yes.
trees, and
Yeah, very
up in
different
Michigan.
kind of way. Up in Michigan. So that yeah, that was back in 2007, and yeah, I mean that was and so I had no basic, any I didn't have any woodworking skills. I had no basics, but I
Yeah.
went there. I did their 2 months program, not even their 6 months program, because
Yeah.
I wanted to just try it to see if it was something that I could even do. But it
Sure.
was long enough that I felt okay, I could at least get my hands on full time for,
Yeah.
8 weeks. So I built
Hmm.
two
Hmm.
guitars there and it so helped me set a very solid foundation.
Hmm. Hmm.
But of course, when you go into the real field, everything has to be broken down again and then rebuilt from that ground up.
Yeah, of course. So it find it interesting because I mean Brian Gallup and Kathy Wingert, they're peers. They know each other fairly well,
Mhm.
and there was no. I always made the assumption that you somehow were connected to Kathy through Gallup, but that didn't happen that way. You knew
No,
Kathy Wingert before you went to Gallup,
correct.
and there was no endorsement of Brian to Kathy of your skills or anything of the sort. You just did it all on your own.
No, not at all. I mean, when I was a student, I had a very minimal interaction with Brian actually,
Hmm.
because I can see that aspect because Brian was the principal and
Hmm.
he had his instructors, and
Hmm.
he's the one who basically put together all the curriculum. But
Yeah.
he had a sort of a very minimal interaction with the students, especially at their entry level journeyman
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
because
who did you work with? Did you work directly with?
yeah, I worked with the teacher at the time named Russell Olmsted, who's
Okay.
not there anymore, but he at the time he's been there for like 8, 10 years as an
Hmm.
instructor.
Hmm.
And then Sam Guidry,
Hmm.
he was doing sort of occasional seminars for students. And
Hmm.
but he was at the time he was mainly working on his Tonewood project
Yeah.
with Brian, and then also building guitars with Brian and doing all the
Yeah.
repairs from my memory. So
Yeah.
I was working directly with Russell, and then Stuart
Russell.
Day, who
Hmm.
was archtop maker, an incredible
Yep.
archtop maker, who was working with Tom Rebecki. He was a TA at the time.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
So
For our listeners who don't know, the Gallup School has produced over 2,500 students at this point in time. So, but Stuart Day went on to have a name, and Sam has a name, and Isaac, you have a good name. You're here on Life with Strings Attached.
mhm,
And so I'm always curious to know as to who you bumped into where at one point in time. So, all right. So
mhm,
you reached out to Kathy on your own. So although
mhm,
Brian and Kathy know each other, actually there was no real connection there for you. So now you're back in
mhm.
LA. She asked you to work for you, which means you must have done a good job on your first guitars. You must have shown real promise. Come on. Yeah. I know Kathy. Kathy is a
Mhm.
nice lady, but she's an honest lady. She wouldn't
Yes.
she she wouldn't fake it.
Mhm.
She would have told you straight
Mhm.
up. So she must have seen some real
Mhm.
promise in you right from your
Mhm.
first instruments, I think.
Mm.
Good on you. Good
Well,
job.
well, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
All right. So and the repair shop, is
Mhm.
this Westwood or is there somewhere else that you're
This was just before Westwood. It was a very busy repair shop right across. It was on Sunset Boulevard, right across Studio Instrument Rental.
Mhm,
And I found out later that he's actually worked at Westwood at some point. But
mhm.
it was his own shop, and yeah, we was just doing a lot of the pro repairs and setup work. But
Yeah.
he basically kind of, he has some health issues and alcohol issues, so he sort of called it off. He said, like, I just walked in one day, he's like, Isaac, thank you for everything, but we're bankrupt, basically, he said. But it was very interesting. But
Mhm,
I had my first experience there, and I was basically out of the repairs position.
mhm.
And during my job search for repair work, I've actually had an interesting. Well, I had a first job interview with Michael Spalt at the time. That was like back in 2011, before he moved back to Austria.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so that was really nice, because I got to know him after, through Holy Grail afterwards. But
I didn't
just,
know that connection.
yeah, it's just a small world bumping to each other. Speaking about that, but
Yeah.
no. So after that, and Kathy actually was consigning a guitar, or doing a plaque work at Westwood. So I just tagged along with her, and then I got in touch with Fred Walicki, and he asked if I had time to work as a repair person in his shop. So um, I was talking with Kathy about it, and then she's like, "Yeah, that's a great opportunity. So why don't you go ahead and do it?" Because I was doing a part-time apprenticeship
Hmm,
with
hmm.
Kathy since the beginning. So
Yeah.
it worked out. So I was driving from LA to
Hmm,
Palos Verdes to Kathy's, and then some days I would go to Westwood, and then
hmm.
those days I would also drive to Northridge in the valley for my
Yeah.
school. So I was doing a lot of driving at the time. Uh,
Yeah.
like
And you're
maybe
in the
like
heart of
100.
it. Those
Yeah.
those are
Mhm.
remarkable places. I think a lot of our guests, are all around the world listening to this podcast, and I don't think they understand the significance of Westwood music or even SIR, studio instrument rental. There's
Mhm.
SIRs all over, and the
Mhm.
major bands come to use
Mhm.
those places to rehearse there. Like the Rolling Stones might have been there rehearsing before they
Mhm.
go out on the road. It's a huge business and a major part of the musical instrument industry. And so to be across
Yeah.
from SIR and Westwood Music, which is one of the original boutique guitar shops, and Fred Wawicki is a legend
Mhm.
in our industry, and working with Fred. And you even mentioned a Plek. I think the first place I ever saw a Plek machine was in Westwood Music,
Mhm.
because it was right in the front window.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't come into Westwood and not see the Plek, which was odd because the repairs were way at the back. But
Mhm.
Fred was a great salesman and really good at
Mhm.
talking people up. And I think that Plek was at the front window for a reason. What is
Yes.
this thing? Well, let me tell you.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Isaac, yeah, I think you've had a really remarkable experience so far to just be in the space where you could interact
Mhm.
with frankly, a lot of people are very far removed from the
Mhm.
kinds of places that you're talking about. And so that's a remarkable bit of history. So all
Mhm.
right, so you're young, you learn to make guitars, you're doing everything you have to do, you're repairing in some places, you're
Mhm.
apprenticing with Kathy, you're still going to school. So what's next for you? What happens next?
So after going to school for like 3, 4 years into my apprenticeship, and I told Kathy, like, Kathy, I'm getting really busy with work, and I don't know if I want to take another semester. Maybe I want to take a break. And then she looked at me and was like, yeah, you've pulled this off until now. I think you can take a break. So I kind of had to get a permission from her. So
Mm-hmm.
I took a break, or I've been taking a break since then. So I'm technically still a part of it. Like, I have my college degree on pending for now. Um, yeah. So
That's the
I took
business
that.
management course.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
didn't end up finishing the college there. And Kathy was asked to sort of cover. John Carruthers was running the Musicians Institute Guitar
Mhm.
Craft Academy,
Mhm.
asked uh, Kathy to join and teach the acoustic program for Guitar Craft Academy. So
Mhm.
I actually joined as her apprentice, not under the school's payroll,
Mhm.
but just under her. And I was sort of, part of one of the first classes that she was teaching.
Mhm.
And I think we only did it for one semester and then said it was just too far of a commute for Kathy and just, it was taking a lot of time away from her bench.
Mhm.
So we just did it for like one semester and then that was it. And maybe like a few years later, back in 2012 or 2013, the new program chair reached out to Kathy, and then Kathy referred me. It's like, I don't have time to teach, but you can talk to Isaac. And he's already taught a course with me. And, now at this point, he's built enough guitars with me to, uh, you know, know how to teach.
Mhm.
So Paul, who was the chairman at the time, he reached out to me and he said if I could join the program as an instructor there. So
Mhm.
I said sure. So that's when I joined MI and
Mhm.
was started teaching there. So I taught there for 7 years, right before they shut down during COVID,
Mhm.
uh, seasonally. So we had a spring course, and then we had a one in the fall. So I was teaching that by like 5 students, but we had a pretty big facility with
Mhm.
good like 30 benches and full woodworking space with grandfathered in spray booth in heart of
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Mhm.
So that was an opportunity for me to actually start building on my own more. Even though I had an access to the shop at Kathy's, the space was limited, and being that I have this um, sort of Eastern culture of me that when I'm working for somebody, or my parents always said, "Hey, if you work for somebody, you have to go all in." And, I sort of never felt 100% comfortable doing my own work,
Mhm.
even if it was, even if I was given the permission to from Kathy.
Mhm.
So, you know, I would work and just not have the full freedom, at least mentally. So when I had my access to the school facility, it was a little bit different because I was basically like the instructor at the program,
Sure.
and I had all my hours. So before and after school, I was
Yeah.
just having full access there. So
And did
uh,
that feel like your shop since you were the instructor? That sort of was your space you felt at that
uh,
point?
Not 100%, but it was enough of a freedom where I can set up my little corner, have my
Mhm.
own all my tools and a workbench. But I knew it still had an access from other outside of the campus to just come and do the stuff. So but it was good enough that I was able to do all my work, long hours. So I would go into uh, the campus in the mornings and then to the class in the afternoon. And then after school's over at 10 p.m., I would just go until like 2 to 3 a.m.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just keep working. So that's when I built my very first guitar on the market.
Mhm.
So, uh,
What year is
and
this?
that was end of 2013.
In 2013. Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
2013. I had a client who's wanted to order a guitar from me even
Mhm.
before I had my anything to show off of. But he just sort of saw what I had going on there. So he's commissioned a guitar, and
Mhm.
I had another close friend. He said, "Hey, I think best time to get a guitar from you is now, before I get married, before you take off on your own." And he just saw this happening. So he was a close friend and he's like, "Hey, I stopped by your house and left a deposit on your desk." I'm like, "What?" So that sort of helped me kickstart to really get it going because now it was serious. He said he
Mhm.
had money. He wanted to, officially commission it. So I had to come up with the design, meet up with him after school, uh, and just work on all the design aspect of it. And yeah, built my first guitar the end of 2013.
Mhm.
Um, so that was another checkpoint where I actually had the very first guitar on the market that I
How much
actually
does that
sold.
guitar resemble what we would know as an Isaac Jang guitar today?
Uh, quite a few elements. I had that Uchida style bendaway
Hmm.
on that guitar. It was a
Hmm.
dreadnought, and
Hmm.
it had a two-tone headstock that I do.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then uh, I would say about good 80% of the
Okay.
visuals
Hmm.
were on there. Um, so yeah, of course, when it comes to the sound aspect of it, I think it's quite different. Just because, I was trying to really figure out all the components in one place and make it the Isaac Jang sound.
Sure. Hmm.
Um, but just by looking at it, you can tell that it still has my look on the guitar.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that was the important sort of the point where now I had a guitar. How do I expand into business? And during that 2014 NAMM show in January, because I've been already
Hmm.
friends with a lot of the guitar makers and companies, even like with Santa Cruz, I went there
Yeah.
to sort of work with their warranty department, working at
Hmm.
Westwood. So it was one of the evenings that Santa Cruz had their house party during NAMM,
Hmm.
and I was talking with guitar maker Mike Baranick,
Yeah.
whom I respect so much. And he was, we were just kind of standing on the hall. He was just talking to me like, "So Isaac, you've been doing a lot of, you've been doing an apprenticeship for a long time. How long have you been doing it?" I was like, like 7, 8 years. And like, how many guitars you built on your under your name? I'm like one or two. Like, Isaac, you need to do these shows. And then I was like, oh, okay, 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 I'll do it. And we kind of had that conversation. He was a little buzzed, and it was like, Isaac, so how many guitars you built? And I'm like, oh, just one or two. Like, you need to do shows. And so I was like, all right. So I really took it to the heart. And
Yeah.
that following, uh, the following year. So what I did is that 2014 when I built my first guitar, I actually drove around all the way to the North Carolina
Hmm.
to see some of the mentors that I respected, Richard Hoover, Jeff Trogget, Irvin Samaji, my friends Leo Buendia and the apprentices there,
Hmm.
and said, hey, can you take a look at my first guitar and give me all your anything you see that I could improve. I was
Hmm.
asking for constructive feedback,
Yeah.
and just please throw anything at me so that I could really improve it. So I took that trip with the guitar that I built from my buddy Albert, and then took all the feedbacks, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna really sort of reshape it and then come up with a model that I can present. And yeah, I started working on that. So that was a good guitar to finish, but also to use that to uh, take feedbacks and also use that to promote my work. And that was also the year that the Healdsburg was no longer happening.
Hmm.
And Healdsburg show has been a like long time staple guitar shows in America. But
Yeah.
the year that I finally decided to go off on my own, they discontinued it. And even with the Montreal Guitar Show Festival, the year that
Hmm.
I got my green card to travel across the world, that
Yeah.
show was discontinued. So I was sort of like, oh man, I'm like all these opportunities I've been really looking forward to as an apprentice, they were all
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Those
So
those were the top of the heap at the time. Those were the best shows you could be going to.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was sort of like trying to like figure out, okay, how am I gonna do this? And there was a show that was coming up that was brand new show. It was called the Memphis Guitar Show.
Hmm.
It only happened once,
Hmm.
but it was one of the shows that was coming up after Montreal and Healdsburg sort of discontinued. So it was the
Yeah.
show that everyone was looking forward to.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I call the show organizer and I said, "Hey, my name is Isaac. I apprenticed with Kathy. I built a guitar. I built one guitar, or I said, I would like to present at the show." And then he was like, "No, I can't. How many guitars you got under your belt?" I'm like, "I have just one." And I was like, this is the gonna be prestige show, and I can't have someone with just one guitar under their belt.
Yeah.
It's just it's not possible. I said, oh, It's like, please, please, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna make you proud, and I'll just do my best to do it. And apparently, so he was like, okay, let me think about it. And I found out later that Kathy actually spoke to him and spoke very highly of me, and
Mm.
so it was actually like a nudge from Kathy to
Yeah,
have me accept it. But that was the show that really pushed me, because without having done a show, I didn't know what it was gonna be like, at least under my own name. I mean, I've seen how
sure.
stressed Kathy was during all these
Hmm.
show times and just like all the deadlines. And now that I'm faced with it, I think my first I had to come up with a design, like I knew OM models that I was working on, and I had to build them. So
Yeah.
probably yeah, spent uh like that 3 months, 4 months, really just like insane amount of hours. I think I slept in the shop many nights,
Hmm.
and finished two guitars barely. I think I finished making a truss rod cover in a hotel room, but I went to the show. Um, but those two guitars that I had presented, one was sold on the way to the show.
Yeah.
Um, Another one was sold at the
Like at a
show.
gas station or something? How do you mean sold on the way to the show?
No, I had a friend whom I've been sort of helping translate to Korean dealer, or
Yeah.
he was a Korean dealer, and he said, "Yeah, if you ever build it," and I said, "What are you taking?" I said, "I have one, two OMs and one Cocobolo, one Brazilian." And he said, "Okay, well, I take one of them." So I sold him one of them to him, and then
Brazilian.
another, yeah, Brazilian.
Yeah.
And then the other one was sold to a shop with Mikigaki. So
Okay.
Mikigaki and then Wood Sound were my very first dealers
Hmm.
to represent my work. And
Yeah.
then that show, I took uh, several orders, and I
Hmm.
started a relationship with yeah, maybe about 3 to 4 dealers after the show. So by the
Ooh,
time I
you remember who
um
they were?
well, one of them, a Guitar Gallery
Yeah.
in
Nashville.
Nashville, yeah, Nashville.
Hmm.
And then the other one is called the Acoustic Music Company in the UK. So that was
Okay.
the shop that was in Brighton. Uh,
Yeah.
and and then we had an open conversation with Dream Guitars. So
Hmm.
we had some conversation going, and then
It's
some.
an international business from day one, Isaac.
I know it was
Korea,
kind of.
Japan, US, UK. I mean, you hit every market like from the opening of the gates.
Yeah, which I
That's
was
pretty remarkable.
not expecting, because I knew going to shows, it's not some, it's, I always saw that as a planting seeds. I mean, because I was talking with Kathy about shows I've gone as apprentice for many years. So I knew that it wasn't something that happens normally. So I never really expected it. But that was kind of yeah, so I had a really great feedback, which I was very grateful for. And then I received some direct orders. And that following month, I came back from the show and realized that I have so many guitars to build at this point that I need to have my own shop.
Mhm.
And I had already planned to have my own shop maybe like year after, but that got shortened by the whole year, basically. So,
Demand.
oh, that the demand. I was like, oh, like I mean,
That's a good problem.
yeah, I could only have so many guitars ongoing at the school. I mean, even though I have a full access, I just didn't feel like having everything. And so I had to really look for that, shop space. And
Hmm.
thankfully, I found this shop space on Hollywood Boulevard, right on Hollywood and Highland. And it was like this beautiful, small, like artisan's patio alley. And I found like a
Yes.
200 square feet, 180 square feet shop space.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that was perfect, because I just needed a space where I can just work my own. And yeah, so that following
And
month or so,
it was final assembly room mostly. It
that's
was you
that
still had all
was,
your major machine. I was at that shop, which means
yeah.
you had. I think you were using your major machines still over at the school. You had a downdraft table and a bench, and
Yeah, that was the original plan. And of
oh,
course, when
okay,
you start setting it up, you're like, well,
yeah,
I think I'm gonna need this, I'm gonna need this, I'm gonna need that. So it ended up being about 85% of all my work was getting in my shop.
Yeah.
I had a downdraft table there. I had the bandsaw, sander. I had one, two, three, four, five, six benches, and
Hmm.
then everything was filled all the way to the top to the bottom. And the big machineries I was actually able to use at the school, and which was about 10 minutes from my shop.
Yeah.
And I was able to just take the parts and then process the parts. And then sometimes I could just do that after class, sometimes
Hmm.
after off hours, and I would just go there and process and then do all my work in the shop. And that's also where I sort of grew my love for hand tools, so
Mm-hmm.
that I could minimize all the power tool usage,
Yeah.
and then move to using a lot of hand saws and chisels and there's
Hmm.
just files, things like that,
Yeah.
so that I could work in a small shop. And so yeah, so that following year, and I had the shop in Hollywood, and I was teaching, and I was still working at Kathy's, and then I was working at Westwood, but I think I start to phase out uh,
Hmm.
toward uh, toward those years. And so I was still doing Kathy's after I set up my shop, and
Hmm.
because I didn't want to just say, "Hey, I set up my shop," and phase out right away. I say, "Hey,
Right.
Kathy, I'm setting up my shop. I know I'm gonna have to phase out at some point, and let's decide on the time frame." So we had another like year
Hmm.
to work with Kathy, and I think end of basically I finished my apprenticeship on my 10th year mark, and
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
I was at that point I was just doing my own work and then teaching.
Yeah.
And the Hollywood shop was a great place because I could allure all my clients to give a Hollywood tour when they visit my
Yes.
shop.
Yes. Yeah, you were right in the heart of Hollywood for the people. I mean, you were basically down the street from Mann's Chinese Theater, weren't you? Like you were on the
Yeah.
Hollywood Walk of Fame almost, right? Like it was,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, you were in the Hollywood you see in the movies. That's exactly where your shop was.
I would go to work in the morning with the Spider-Man and Supermans and Wonder Womans
Yeah.
together.
You mean the people dressed up in those outfits for pictures and
Yes.
such?
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, we would park the same spot, and then I see, "Hey, Spider-Man!" They're like, "Hey, what's up?" Yeah.
what a what a surreal
Mhm. Yeah.
experience, except it was
Yeah.
daily for you.
Yeah, and it was beautiful because like you walk into that patio, all of a sudden it just like, zoom, and then it becomes
Yeah.
a very quiet place with water fountain, and it was magical. And yeah, I
Well,
had
it's a
a
nice little serene corner in the middle of all the
mhm,
chaos that is Hollywood. And so that was,
exactly. So
yeah.
yeah, so that was a beautiful shop space, and at some point, and it's sort of I felt like, okay, now I'm really feeling squeezed in, and I
Hmm.
needed to figure out how to expand the space. So the next door neighbor moved out, and then there's a couple of neighbors moved out and around that patio. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I could expand into those shops. That thought started to occur.
Hmm.
And I said, well, for that price, maybe I could look into other places. And I started to really explore that option. And then, of course, next thing I noticed is I found another shop space out here near South Pasadena in Alhambra,
Hmm.
downtown, and found a shop space that it's basically like 6.5 times bigger than the original space, 1,300 square feet. So
Hmm.
this is where I am at. And of course, the day I signed, 2 to 3 weeks later, we had a COVID ordinance came in the city.
Right.
Um, so things kind of the timing was very interesting, and it
Hmm.
could have been scary, but actually for me, I had enough work that I knew I can build up the shop and start working away, and uh, make it happen. And even the point where I knew I wanted to keep everything in house,
Hmm.
including finishing, uh, that thought was sort of happening because I also felt like maybe going to school and teaching, taking time away from building was limiting. So I tried my best to mimic all the setups that I had in school and my Hollywood shop.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think the week after I finished setting it up and start working on guitars, I get a call from school say, "Hey, sorry, are shut down. Like our program is now discontinued.
Mhm.
Everyone is getting laid off.
Mm.
And then for me, I'm just thinking inside, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Timing worked out.
Yeah.
All right. Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Are you serious about the business of guitar? Then you need to join us on Patreon. We're building a future where guitar makers are able to live prosperous lives making instruments that inspire the musical experience, which helps to create a more beautiful world. Where others who are passionate about the guitar can thrive, those who help in the promotion and resale, trade shows, writing of books and articles are supported as a valuable part of the community. A community where we explore with curiosity and encourage those around us in their endeavors. With a community effort, we can accomplish far more than we can individually. So let's be serious about your guitar business and join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jamie Gale Music. We are better together, so let's do this together. I love where we've been, and I'm excited about where we're going. So I
So,
met you somewhere in that last portion. You know,
yes.
we met the first time in Berlin at a
Yeah.
Holy Grail Guitar Show
Mhm.
in the lobby of the Estrella. You were with our common friend Adam Miller.
Yes. That was
Yeah.
2016, my first international show. And
Mm-hmm.
that was shortly after the Santa Barbara show in 2016.
Yep.
So yeah, it was the Santa Barbara show in August, and I think the Holy Grail was in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
September, October, somewhere there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Great. It was a nice first meeting. It was you
Yeah.
and your
Yes.
brother, and
Mhm,
he's a kind guy and
mhm,
lovely person. Yeah. And Adam
mhm.
Miller is
Yeah.
world class, lovely individual also.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible monster player. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, great guitar player.
Mhm.
Also just a lovely
Yeah.
person.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Mhm,
that's really great. And so that's a lot of the good sort of structural details. Let's put
mhm.
some flesh on these bones for a second here, Isaac, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of remarkable people in your
Mhm,
past that I suspect had a good influence on you.
mhm,
What do you think if you had to identify or distill down into one
mhm,
word or a sentence the experience of working with Kathy Wingert, what do you think the most
mhm,
important thing you sort of took from working with Kathy all those years? Because Kathy's a remarkable guitar maker and a
mhm,
remarkable individual, and her daughter does incredible inlay work also. That's they make a really wonderful craft, and so
mhm,
but we all can see those pictures. So what is it like on
mhm.
the inside, the personal side? What did you learn from being there?
Uh, Good question. I feel that the technical aspect of guitar making, that I probably absorbed as much as I could in that first 2 to 3 years. But something that I see as the bigger benefit of working for someone much longer than that is all the small habits and details that they put on instruments. So at that
Mm-hmm.
point, it's not the technical how to carve things, how to shape things. It's more like all the small uh the habits, right? I mean, like, when you're looking at line, you're not just looking at the straight lines, you're looking through the shadow and you're looking at from different angles, making sure everything looks good. um, from that kind of work to fine tuning every components of it. If what happens to the instrument if I did this, if I carve the neck more, if I carve the heel more, if I change the bridge pins to a different shape, and if I cut this bridge string ramp slot this much or that much, how high the
Mm-hmm.
saddle show up, how low the saddle show up, the angle of the strings coming from the nut to the headstock, how much the fret shape of the frets, or how much the surface of the frets touch the strings. I mean, all of these small components getting fine-tuned to the sound that we're shooting for. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily better or worse. It's something that you can at least control those aspects of it that are almost hard to A/B compare it, only because every instrument is so different, even made from the same batches
Mhm.
of wood. Uh, s- but just being able to fine tune all of those small components sort of helped me understand more about the approach to guitar making. It's that especially with the handmade guitars, we are not just uh, replicating the results. We are building a bespoke instrument for a client who's looking for specific things. And now that I'm able to really uh, adjust and fine tune these details. Uh, if you look at my guitars, they look very similar, one next to the other, but
Mhm.
a lot of the small things, how to make the top responsive to the player's needs, it all comes down to the material choices, old wood, and then how I voice the guitars. It has a lot to do with it. So, uh, a lot of those approaches and communicating with clients, things like that, I just saw how Hattie was handling, and
Mhm.
then asked her afterwards, and she would give me her feedback. Um, and then as well as working with Fred, I saw Fred, how he sort of handled with players and see
Mhm.
what they're really looking for. It's not just the technical aspect of adjusting one amount of truss rod run, turn, or like adjusting a saddle a little bit. It's more like
Mhm.
you really have to understand what the player's looking for and just really finding the needs for them. So
Mhm.
uh, those are some of the importance to me than building like the perfect, clean, cleanest of the clean guitars, because
Mhm.
after some point, if the sound and playability are not met, then it all just becomes a beautiful, fine furnitures that looks like guitars, but doesn't serve the
Mhm.
purpose. So those are my very main focus, and that sort of leads into some of my design philosophy. Is that I wanted my first guitars to resemble sort of the real simple and simplified, no bling bling, because I wanted to focus on the sound and the
Mhm.
playability first, but yet still wanted to keep things sort of elegant. And I knew that if I kept everything simple but did it really well,
Mhm.
then it would sort of sums up as a simple yet elegant result. So
Mhm.
my focus has been the first two, right? The sound playability, and then
Mhm.
the visuals, the aesthetics, and uh, and that's sort of been what I've been pursuing, and that's what made up my ground for instrument building.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. All right. Great. You know, you are very considerate and very kind. You are one of the beating hearts of the guitar community. When you show up, smiles show up. People love to see you, Isaac,
Thank you.
and and you take a lot of photographs. So we haven't talked
Mhm,
about photography yet, but you take a
mhm,
lot of photographs. And when I review your photographs after a
mhm,
guitar show, which often, for those who don't follow Isaac on social media, which you should, by the way, Isaac Jang or Isaac Jang
mhm,
Guitars, I
mhm,
believe it is. You will see a lot of photographs of his peers, of his friends, and if they're strangers, you won't note how authentic those pictures are. But if you know those people, you see that Isaac manages to pull out the best in people all the time. You get the character of people and you get great smiles and great engagement, and you can see the personality of those people in your photographs.
mhm.
Isaac, how did that happen? There's a lot of people out there in the world who are very socially awkward who wish they could engage people like you do. Why 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 do you think that is, you know?
Mm, mm. Well, thank you for saying
Isaac,
that.
please tell me why you're just so damn wonderful.
Oh, wow, that's you know, huh. Well, I think big part of it could be my parents, right? I mean, I got their genes. My dad is just like me, 110%. Um,
Hmm.
he loves people. My mom too, but like my dad is like the most social person yeah, that I know of,
Hmm. Hmm.
and but also for me, because I came from Korea with no background in even speaking English, I had
Hmm.
to pick up a lot of people's feelings and their emotions by their expressions and their gestures.
Hmm. Yep.
And also being surrounded by wonderful people, I sort of have this maybe people pleasing yeah, aspect of me. But that because that also gives me joy,
Hmm.
and maybe that sort of played some part into it. I'm not sure. I'm just as you were asking that question, I am just sort of like thinking, oh, that's interesting, and I'm just trying to grasp that. But yeah, because I think big part of it is because I didn't really know how to engage with people in the big earlier on in my youth
Hmm.
by speaking the language. I mean, of course,
Hmm.
I learned more and more, but it was part of it was just through you know being able to really read and pick up people's emotions through their expression, facial expressions and gestures. Yeah, a lot of that
Hmm.
came into
Hmm.
play.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of making people laugh and like you that's a good survival strategy, frankly,
Mhm,
right? It's
mhm,
just being likable, being the person that someone doesn't want to do bad things to when
mhm,
you're in a new environment. That's a good survival strategy. It really is. And people do that a lot. You'll often see that with people who are at a disadvantage, like young men
mhm,
who are of a smaller stature,
mhm,
often use humor as their strategy,
mhm,
to because boys can be unkind at stages while we're
mhm.
working at the pecking order, and
Uh,
and so being the funny little guy is a good strategy for a lot of people,
mhm,
but
mhm,
you're not a little guy. You're a good sized guy, and yeah, you have a really pleasant way about you, and so
mm,
I appreciate that, and I feel like if we did this interview and I didn't address that, people
mhm.
wouldn't know who Isaac Jang is,
Ah, well,
and people love being around you, Isaac. I put you when you've been a part of the Boutique Guitar Showcase. I usually put you on the aisle because people want to be around you. Oh,
thank
there's
you.
Isaac. There's someone smiling. I want us to be around. And of course, your guitars are beautiful. So don't
Thank you.
don't get me wrong. It's not that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just there as eye candy. Your
Well,
your
yeah,
guitars are wonderful
yeah.
instruments,
Well,
but it's a great combination.
thank you. And I think also, I mean, just big part of my identity is, my religion, my Christianity, and I think
Hmm.
that probably took the biggest role in my character.
Hmm.
I'm not perfect, but I am striving to be because I
Hmm.
receive more than I can give.
Hmm.
And the even like with the photography aspect of it is, as I was an apprentice growing up. I saw a lot of the Guild of American Lutherie conventions and videos and photos of builders,
Hmm.
and I learned so much from it. And I wanted to sort of give back to the community by sort of archiving a lot of photos and videos as much as I could,
Hmm.
and let the world see what's happening because it's like in NAMM or any guitar shows, you don't really it's not often that you get to see the world class instruments all in one spot. And if you don't document it, then we might not even see it in the future. So
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
something that I always aspire to.
Yeah,
Well, my
yeah. So
real
you
secret plan is make a book in 30 years.
maybe you should. Why wait 30 years? You've got a lot of photographs already, man. You don't have to make it sort of posthumous. So your Christian faith, that's a honestly, that's a bit of a stereotype, sort of the Christian Korean immigrant's a strong stereotype and trope. It shows up in TV shows all the time. There's a Mrs. Kim character in the Gilmore Girls who, her daughter is secretly stuffing rock and roll albums in the floorboards and dressing up around her back. And she's gotta have a very strict sort of Christian
Mhm.
home, and the child is repressed in that scenario.
Uh-huh.
That's not
Mhm.
always the case. I know lots of. I also spent a fair amount of time in the church, and anybody
Mhm.
who has all knows the pressures of that pastor's kid,
Mm. Mhm,
and how they
mhm.
often end up being the most rebellious kids in that. Not naming any names or pointing any
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
fingers, but they often have a hard time living up to the pressures
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah.
Actually, Sheldon Dingwall, one of our guests previously
Mhm.
from this podcast, was a pastor's kid.
Oh, uh-huh.
Growing up, and we talked about that sort
Mhm.
of pressure at some point in time, and
Yeah.
um, so is that there are people who are cultural Christians, and there are people who
Mhm.
really it's their choice. And I don't know how to really phrase this question, Isaac.
Oh, well, well,
You're not being
just
tested by God in here. You're not going to hell if you answer it wrong.
yeah,
But
yeah,
how
mm,
how does that define you?
uh, probably the latter, not cultural, but by choice. My
Mm-hmm,
parents went to church, but not necessarily like the most devout Christians,
mm-hmm,
especially in my youth growing up, because
mm-hmm,
my parents were both working when I was in my youth. I spent a lot of time with my youth pastor, and
mm-hmm,
just kind of growing up and growing in a youth group and worship, leading the worship band, and so it was basically my choice to really, get serious about my faith, and
mm-hmm,
I think that's so that's kind of where I stand,
mm-hmm,
and making sure that salt and light of the world. I mean, trying to be the people who can influence other people to smile. I mean,
mm-hmm,
that's one way to walk. I mean, I like to walk what I say or what I believe than to just the saying words, and then not walk the walk. So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm familiar with this. I too, during my
Mhm, mhm,
teenage years and such, spent a lot of time playing in church, and I
mhm,
know that a lot of people fully understand exactly how much music happens in churches.
mhm,
I had a friend who was living in Baton Rouge who would say there's way more church happening Sunday morning than there is Saturday night in most
mhm,
cities.
mhm,
And that actually the majority of the music makers are happening in houses of worship, not in the bars.
mhm,
Even though we think of it the other way around somehow.
mhm.
And when I was young, I toured in a Christian rock band. I've played
Oh, wow.
Christian music all over the world,
Wow.
and that was a part of my time with my wife. My
Mhm,
brother and her stepfather at the time
mhm.
played in a Christian heavy metal band.
Wow.
At the time, and I came over to jam with them.
Mhm.
Because I grew up on hard rock and heavy metal also, um, and so the Christian music scene, the CCM scene, as it's said,
Yeah.
and actually our guest who's coming out this next week, it'll be out by the time this episode is out. Rick
Mhm.
Riordan, they did I think over 800 CCM packages, album packages, and he also they designed the American Country Music Award, and they were very much in music. But when you're in Nashville
Mhm.
during that time period, the 90s and the early 2000s, there was a ton of Christian music being made,
Mhm.
popular music, you
Yeah.
know, alongside the country music in Nashville. And
Mhm.
so, I'm very familiar with the playing and teaching and
Mhm.
being part of the youth group and all that stuff also. And
Mhm.
as I grew, I don't spend very much time in a church these days. And
Mhm.
truth be told, my belief system is probably somewhat quite different at this point in time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I do really think about with my own children,
Mhm.
you know, um, if you're not going to some sort of religious context once a week,
Mhm.
there isn't really other contexts where people intentionally go once a week to try and be a better person. Like those people
Mhm.
are literally going to be tested and trying to be a better person, to
Mhm.
learn how to deal with your issues, to come together as a community, to feed each other, to take care of the homeless, to feed the widows and orphans, all of that kind of
Mhm.
stuff that happens in the religious context. Um, I just don't know where that comes from outside of it,
Mhm. Oh, that's a good point.
and how you teach. morality and such, you do through your own experience, you do through,
Mhm.
but culturally there has to be, or not has to be, but there's a benefit from an agreed upon narrative
Mhm.
where everyone in the culture sort of has the same sense of morality. And interestingly, Richard Dawkins, a famous atheist, in this last year came out and said he's a cultural Christian. Listen, I may not believe in the deity of God, he says,
Mhm.
but effectively, I do believe in the morality of Christianity, the
Mhm.
Judeo-Christian sort of ethics of,
Mhm.
the golden rule and how you treat people, and uh, that's that is our common narrative, whether we're religious or not, at this
Mhm.
point in time.
Mm. Nice.
And it's
Yeah.
it's a it's a unifying. We need a unifying narrative, and
Yeah.
so, anyways, I don't know how much time you think
Yeah,
about that
no,
kind of stuff. I went a bit of a
well, I
rabbit trail
do,
there,
well,
but
that, but because also for me that affects my work, uh, significantly.
hmm
The kind of the work that I do is solo, and it
hmm
requires a lot of inner struggle and battle.
hmm
Uh, and for me, the way I see my work is because no one's watching me except for myself,
hmm
and it's very difficult to sort of pursue perfection and excellence just by own, because I'm a very weak man. I have a very I'm not, so for me, I'm always seeing as a, okay, so if God is my audience, is this good enough? And if that's always the reference that I was trying to put. Of course, that's really not, probably shouldn't be the best way. But if I'm putting my best work now, I think that's gonna be sort of how I would like to be.
hmm
So a lot of the sort of the tug of war within myself kind of helps with my work,
hmm
to really put it out there. And yeah, I don't know if that even makes any sense, but yeah.
It does. It's a way of aiming up, Isaac. So
Yes.
it's a way of, if you don't set a higher standard,
Hmm.
what do you rise to?
Hmm.
Right, and this is the current challenge of modern culture, is, since Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God,
Hmm.
which wasn't him saying God is dead. He was saying culturally that has shifted.
Hmm.
It was what he was really sort of showing, and that if we go after our own morality, how do you aim up? How do you aim at a higher standard? I have something written on
Hmm.
my on my board here. I can't read it with my studio lights on, but I think it says attend to the day, but aim at the highest order.
Hmm.
So I have to do my
Hmm.
daily work. I can't be just dreaming all the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I'm aiming up,
Yes.
and although I wouldn't call myself religious at this point in time, I still fundamentally believe in all the teachings of Jesus.
Hmm.
Um, it was just as I traveled the world and met so many other people of other faiths and such, it felt like this idea that you had to proclaim this one particular sentence to get through the door seemed a
Hmm.
bit closed-minded at the time. It
Hmm.
seemed like this can't be right. There's just far too many people who don't know how to say this sentence, the sinner's prayer, and
Hmm.
that was the struggle, but not the teachings. The teachings, I
Hmm.
think, are just distilled truth at this point in time.
Hmm.
And so I do think that um, currently there's a lot of people who feel quite lost,
Hmm.
untethered, because we have untethered our culture
Hmm.
from our agreed upon narrative.
Hmm.
And that shows up in many ways. And so let's bring it back to work for a second. It shows up in the work. There's a lot of people expressing just dissatisfaction with their work,
Hmm.
but where are they aiming? What are they aiming at? You know,
Hmm.
at this point in time, I kind of aim direction good. And that, as ambiguous as that sounds,
Hmm.
it means, so when I'm on the road and we're going from event to event with the Pucci Guitar Showcase on tour,
Hmm.
I realized I'm passing right by some of the guitar making schools that I've taught at. I've
Hmm.
been a guest lecturer at. I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to show up with 50 guitars and show them and
Hmm.
have them to be able to experience those instruments in person? You'll
Hmm.
understand that. It's a drive over day for us. Like literally, it's some extra work of unloading, setting up.
Hmm.
But we have a nice evening with the students. The students are normally super excited to see these instruments. And of course, they
Hmm.
invite other people from the town. But that's direction good for me. That's like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's doing something a little extra in the world, a little extra nice, a little extra good that I don't have to do. There's no
Hmm.
direct benefit from it
Hmm.
in the immediate sense, But long-term strategy, I say, well, if everyone else is doing the good things that they can do, well, then that's probably a better world for us to live in.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, and how Fred always told me, there's not much traffic in the extra mile.
Yeah.
Like take that to the heart.
Say that one more time.
There's not much traffic in the extra miles.
How do you interpret that?
So going extra mile on your work or any of your, just doing good. There's once you get there, there's not many people there. So
Hmm.
just by doing just a few extra miles, that alone would really kind of help boost your work and your activities that you're
Yeah.
doing, your deeds. So that's always something that I strive for.
Could I understand that to say that many people don't go the extra mile, so there's not much traffic, there's fewer people
Exactly.
traveling the extra mile, and
Hmm.
that's how you differentiate yourself. That's how you rise above, aiming at the higher order, the higher good, if you will. Would that
Yes.
be a
Yeah.
fair interpretation?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, it could be interpreted into the quality of work, but also, like you said, like in the deeds, doing good work. There's not many people doing it. So it sort of, you know, yeah, basically helps you differentiate uh, being doing good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's I'm glad that you have that belief, Isaac. I'm glad that you have the drive to improve,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's healthy to have that idea that someone is watching,
Hmm.
and actually if Bette Midler is to believe that God is watching us from a distance, I believe she said,
Hmm.
uh, you know, but it's not the creepy judgment kind of thing. It's just the
Right.
idea
Hmm.
of, yeah, there's a standard. There's a way
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
yeah, don't be complacent.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, at least that's kind of this standard that I am aiming for. Not that it would satisfy all the needs, but
Hmm.
that's just my personal belief system that I just work by,
Hmm.
and that yeah kind of helps me uh, kind of work through that inner
Do you ever think
struggles.
about how you'll be remembered, Isaac? How do you want people to see you? You're projecting something.
And
What
some
would be
percent.
well, that's achieved, man. What do you got to go for now?
Mm. Isaac with good smile. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I like that. You mentioned earlier on the idea of passing things on,
Mhm.
and again, maybe it's the stage I'm at. I'm a grandfather now. My kids are
Mhm.
grown up. They're both married.
Mm,
And
mhm.
I'm actually really surprised as to how many people tell me that they're envious.
Mm,
I didn't expect it. They're like, "Oh, you've got a grandson already? Oh, my kids, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever be a grandfather. I really would love to be though." And
mm,
and I'm like, really? Like that's
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
happy, but
mhm,
it's like every week, maybe daily, I have people confessing that,
mhm.
you know, they waited longer to have children. Now their children are waiting longer to have children, and they're like, I don't know
Um,
if I'll be alive if there even is going to be a grandchild, because we
mm,
just simply don't uh we haven't done a very good job of uh, of celebrating family in our modern
mhm,
society in the Western world. It's we don't we downplay motherhood. My
mm,
wife stayed at home with the kids, and it was like it was supposed to be shameful. You'd run into someone like, "Oh, what are you doing now?" I said, "Oh, I have a
mhm,
couple of kids, and I'm home with them." Like, "Yeah, but what do you do?" Like, what do I do?
mm,
You know what it takes to care for
mm,
these kids and be a great mom? Because my wife's a great mom, and she's a fantastic nana, and she
mhm,
takes it really seriously being a mom. But we do not take it seriously in a culture, and
mhm,
so there's been this real change in the family. But you're part of an immigrant family, as you said. You've
mhm,
you've got. I have a feeling like you have a sense of family that's imported
mhm.
from Korea. How is
Yes.
that different, Isaac? And how?
Oh, because I would say because we came as one unit,
Hmm.
right? Like my mom and dad and my brother, especially my parents were, they wanted to make sure that we don't have any other relatives out here. This is, the family. So I think there was a pretty strong family value instilled in us. Same thing for my wife Esther. They come from Argentina, but they're also moved from Korea to Argentina and then back into LA.
Hmm.
And I think also very similar. There's a strong family value, and I
What
think
is
that
that value?
value,
How do you define it?
uh, just being there for each other, their needs. If you getting together, I think on a regular basis also is very important.
Hmm.
I mean, just down to that practicality, right? And also, if there's delicious food, you share. Uh,
Hmm.
you you run out of eggs right now with the whole chaos. Then if you see dozen of eggs at a market, you pick them up for them, like things like that. Just like as small as uh, you know going to the market and buying stuff for them if they need it. So yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. I'm splitting my time now between Canada and Italy. We have
Mm,
a second home in Italy, and when we're there in Italy, we're much more social
mm,
because the environment is much more social.
uh-huh.
Like everybody goes out for a coffee in the morning for breakfast. Like, and the cafes are packed. No, it's cheap.
Mhm.
Like I get a cappuccino and a cornetto, which is like a cream filled croissant, basically.
Uh-huh.
Something like that, and it's $2.25 for both.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
you live. Yeah, yeah, right.
Wow.
And the Italians are listening, going, "What's the problem?"
Mhm.
But so Roberta and I both go out for breakfast, and it costs us $4.50,
Mhm.
and it's great quality, and it's
Mm,
full of happy people doing
mm,
life, and food and family and socialization is extremely important within that
mhm,
culture, and yeah, I really enjoy it. But in where I'm from in Canada, things went from very social communities when I was very young
mhm,
in the late 1970s and early 1980s. That's just the age that I am. Um, you basically went out of the house and you were told to come home when the streetlights go on.
mm.
Like the kids sort of were together when you
Wow.
weren't in school. The kids were together,
Uh-huh.
and you would come home to eat, and then you go back
Mm.
out again. And
Uh-huh.
but over the time from my generation to the next generation, we became inside dwellers. The culture
Oh.
became inside
Mhm,
dwellers in front of
mhm,
the video games, computer, whatever it happens to be,
mhm,
and people became afraid to let their children go outside.
mm,
And I think it's had a really. Uh, I don't see that everywhere else in the world. They still have video
mhm,
games, they still have computers, but I see whole families out often in Italy,
mhm.
and I don't see it as much here or when I'm in LA or
Yeah.
many other parts of the Western world. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I love that you mentioned food, though.
Yeah.
I
Food.
remember places by food, and I think the first time we met, we ate. I actually, you and Adam Miller and your brother came out to my hotel room, and I think I had like
Yeah, we had
salami and
some
cheese and
salami
some
cheese and
wine, and
prosciutto and some yeah, grapes. I remember that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Food's really important to me. I
Oh,
travel with an espresso machine these days, also, just to
yeah.
make sure we have good
It's
coffee.
it's important. It's a big part of my yeah, my logistics too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Matter of fact, last year we were in Osaka, Japan together,
Mhm.
and a bunch of us went out and we just went from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant. And Isaac, you can eat, man. You were just ready for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it was
Yeah.
great. And it was inspiring. I don't know how you're not 400 pounds. I presume you don't eat like that all the time. Maybe you do. But
Only in vacation. In Japan, the portions are small. I can do like 13 meals a day, no problem.
even the breakfast buffet, man, you hit it hard. You're up
Oh,
and down, up and down.
you gotta get your money's worth.
I love it. I love you approach it with a real zeal, which
Hmm.
is which is great. Which is great.
Yeah, Dang.
And so, yeah, that's wonderful. All right. So, and now there's Isaac, the husband, and Isaac, the dad.
Mhm.
How has starting your own family changed you?
Oh man, I don't even know what I'm doing. I wish I knew to the answer. I mean, I'm doing my best. I mean, my first child, trying to be, I mean, just being a good husband, that alone is a whole another learning curve. And then, being a new dad and trying to be a good dad. I mean, that's a whole. I mean, I think I'm, you know, even barely keeping myself up and running. So now I have another human being to take care of. So for me, it's actually would have been it wouldn't have been possible without help of Esther, because she's really doing all the real work, and I'm basically it's like, okay, can you do this? I'm like, okay, I'll do this. I'll do that. Boom. So when it comes to that, I try to be more in the supportive role.
Mhm.
But when it comes to important stuff, yeah, we try to take charge and all that. But I don't know, no, that's a hard one.
I mean, being a husband and a father and a grandfather and a father-in-law, right? I
Mhm.
have I have two other kids now that were married into my family that were raised in other houses,
My
but
goodness.
they're they're my kids, in a
Hmm.
different way, but they're my kids, and that's really interesting having a grown-up child injected into your family, you
Oh,
know. And but I mean, you mentioned Esther's parents. I mean, you
mhm.
are the son-in-law.
Yes.
You haven't had, so you've experienced it on one side, and eventually your children will grow up, and you will be the one
Hmm.
who has your child will bring home someone they say that's now in your family.
Wow. That's
And
wow. That's wild.
yeah, yeah, and you learn so much. It's it's two sides to the same coin, being
Hmm.
the son and the father.
Hmm.
It's but only the father has been the son and the father,
Mm.
right? Until
Yeah.
you grow up and have children, and then
Mm.
you become the son and the father, and then you become the son and the father and the grandfather. And each relationship in those aspects of life are uh, such a learning curve for yourself. And I've loved it all. I mean, there's moments where I didn't love it, but there's mostly, I don't understand how to be a complete person without understanding those relationships anymore.
Mhm.
And every
Mhm.
time I hit that next stage in life, I'm like, wow, how did I know anything about the world before this stage in life? You know,
Mm.
do you, does that sound insane to you, or do you have a sense of what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, I get a sense of what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of thinking through a lot of those aspects of it, just the fact that I have another human being,
yeah,
depending on our, us being there 24/7, basically.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm starting to think more about it. Then, yeah, wow,
yeah. And then
yeah.
they eventually start to take care of you. My kids are both in their mid to late 20s, and you
Mhm.
know, you've
Oh,
seen it.
yeah.
We work together at the NAM show. You'll see, like
Hmm.
I'll be talking to someone. I'll take my glasses off
Hmm.
to wipe my glasses, and then a hand will come around me, and they'll take my glasses away from me, and then my glasses will come back like 30 seconds later, clean.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I'm just like, oh, look at that. And it was my daughter, who's
Oh.
just like, is, she's at work. She's seeing what's happening here, but they're facilitating, and we know each other all so well
Mhm.
that there's just yeah, it's an incredible thing. And so, that relationship and how we get to know each other and negotiate our relationship with each other.
Mhm.
There's an extension of that in the guitar community.
Mhm.
Um, that people always talk about the guitar makers community as a family,
Mhm.
and it's like you have a chance to go see family, and Isaac is the family photographer. But not just a photographer.
Mhm.
You're also a wonderful guitar maker. And I mean, let's just put this to bed for a second. Isaac, nobody makes a better guitar than you. They make a different guitar.
Mhm.
but your guitars are as good as anybody at the top in the world. And so, uh, sorry for all the people who listen to this about guitars. So let's just sort of say, hey, there's your guitar moment. Isaac is absolutely one of the best acoustic guitar makers in the world, maybe that have ever lived, because I think we make better guitars today than we ever have. And therefore, if you're at the top of the class today, you're at the top of the class in history. I'm not one of those who believe that we made better instruments at some point in time in the past. I think that's silly.
Mhm.
We improve, we pass on the knowledge, we get better and better. And so, Isaac, you make wonderful, unique, world class instruments. You have risen to the top and I am very thankful for knowing you. And I've had many people, I've been at those shows, and I ask world class touring guitar players what they played today that they really liked.
Mhm.
And the answer has very often been an Isaac Jang guitar.
Wow. Wow.
And
Thank you.
so, yeah, you've been weighed, you've been measured, and you have not been found wanting.
Yeah.
And so,
Mm.
so well done.
Thank you. Um,
But it's not
hmm.
all the hierarchy that keeps us coming back together.
Mhm. Mhm. The one of the things, because I done some sort of local tech work for Tommy Emmanuel, and
Mm-hmm.
he's always said that, Isaac, we're in the business of delivering happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, the playing guitar aspect of it is one thing, but for the his entertainment part of concert, because if you go to his concert, regardless you're a guitar player or not, everyone just fully merges in and enjoys the show. And
Yeah,
that's
he's a
something
great
that
entertainer.
I'm aspired to become. Is of course, making a great guitar is important, but if I could deliver happiness through my guitars, whether they can see it, they can play it, uh, and for me, it's a bigger goal to have
Mm-hmm.
than just building a good sounding guitar. Because at the end, our instruments, because we're spending so many hours in teaching guitars, that it's a representation of me and my time and energy. So there's gonna be some of the DNA, quite a few DNA in the guitar that I make. And if I could, instill a little bit of, the happiness in my guitars, so that anyone who plays guitars, they can sort of really experience that. That would really be the ultimate, the reward that I could expect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The happy guitar with Isaac Jang.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Are you serious about the business of guitar? Then you need to join us on Patreon. We're building a future where guitar makers are able to live prosperous lives making instruments that inspire the musical experience, which helps to create a more beautiful world. Where others who are passionate about the guitar can thrive, those who help in the promotion and resale, trade shows, writing of books and articles are supported as a valuable part of the community. A community where we explore with curiosity and encourage those around us in their endeavors. With a community effort, we can accomplish far more than we can individually. So let's be serious about your guitar business and join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jamie Gale Music. We are better together, so let's do this together. I love where we've been, and I'm excited about where we're going. So how do you achieve that? How do you aim at
Um,
happiness? What does
how
it
do
mean?
I think it starts with the whole experience part of it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm start building guitars, I want to really allow the communications with my clients to enjoy the process. And then also by making a good sounding guitar that plays easy, that inspires them to play music, I think that sort of becomes that translates into the happiness. So uh, but the way it translates in practicality is I have to make good guitars, and then make sure that every aspect of it, and to be uh, thorough and well made. I think
Hmm.
that's important in the quality of it, and of course, making sure that the experience is met with my clients.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Isaac, is there a topic today that you were hoping we discussed that if I were a more intuitive interviewer, I would have asked you?
No, I think I like this organic process of interviewing and just having our chat more, just having our personal chat, but just being streamed for your audience to see. I think um, that's all I could ask for. Is there anything that you think you want to talk about more?
No, no, that's just I like to give the guest an opportunity to
Ah,
say, "Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about so on and so forth." So, for example, I had a Costa Lagas, who's an incredible special effects guy
mhm,
in Hollywood, not Hollywood, New Zealand, China,
mhm, mhm,
Australia, but he's worked on many of the biggest films, of the Marvel films, and
mm,
Prometheus, and The Hobbit, and all sorts of incredible work. And I thought we were coming to the end of the interview, and I asked him that question. He's like, "Yeah, Jamie, I'm really curious if you believe in free will." Like,
mm.
oh, okay. And honestly, we talked for 3.5 hours in total. I had to cut that episode into two episodes because he had as many questions to push back on me as I did with him,
Mhm,
and that became a two-episoder. It doesn't happen very often, so that's not a challenge,
mhm.
Isaac. I'm not saying you haven't risen to the occasion,
Oh, wow.
but sometimes there's something that you anticipate that you think that we're going to end up talking
Yeah.
about, and
Well, something that I'm curious about is because you've seen and experienced a lot of the world class instruments. I remember when you reached out to me, I was a little bit surprised. Like, oh, wow, Jamie wants me to display my guitars at the particular guitar showcase.
mhm.
I'm just curious about your decision factors and why you thought that, and how you're seeing my guitars in the world, in the place of some of the best guitars uh, that you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, I mean, what I'm always looking for are unique world class instruments that are contributing something to the conversation of the guitar.
Mhm,
So you have to be saying something that someone else hasn't said. Because, like Fred
mhm,
Wawicki sort of said,
mhm,
that
mhm,
there's not much traffic in the extra miles.
mhm,
I'm looking for those who go the extra miles, because there's a whole lot of
mhm,
people who can learn to make what is a good guitar, maybe even a really great performing guitar,
mhm,
but it's those extra miles, those moments he talked about with Kathy, like
mhm,
identifying the lines and looking for this
mhm,
way, look for that way, follow the line, follow the shadow, and just make sure it's exactly as you want it to be.
mhm,
Um, and you have to have something to say.
mhm,
It's that classic Shakespearean, all the world is a stage and you may contribute a verse,
mhm,
but not everybody does contribute a verse.
mhm,
I'm looking for those who are gonna
mhm,
step up and say something.
mhm,
And Isaac, as your story testifies, you know, all of your peers go to those shows not expecting to sell guitars. You go to your first guitar show and you pick up four of the best guitar resellers in the entire world across the globe, Isaac. You picked up on your very first show a
mhm,
Korean dealer, a Japanese dealer. You picked up a
mhm,
UK dealer and an American dealer in
mhm,
Nashville there. And those were all very experienced people who see a
mhm,
lot of guitars. And just like me, they walk past most of them because they're not anything different than they already have to say.
mhm,
And so, really, the first bit is, can you pull me out of the aisle? And so when I'm walking a show, the Holy Grail Guitar Show used to have, I mean, I think something like 140 to 180 different guitar makers. It was a big
mhm,
show.
mhm,
And they were discriminating as to who they would invite. They didn't just allow anybody. You had to have some pedigree. You had to have some history.
Mhm.
To be building for a certain amount of years, before they would allow you to exhibit. And so it was
Mhm.
already a discriminating show. And still,
Mm.
within 180 people, I might have found, you know, 15 of them that were the type of guitar makers, or 10 of them that I
Mhm.
work with, which I already knew most of them. But I'd find a couple of new people at each
Mhm.
show. And so, how did you pull me from the aisle? Well, it
Mm.
probably is your use of line. So you
Mhm.
make a clean guitar, but your type of cutaway, which you call a bend away, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That your headstock, your sense of proportion and line is pleasing.
Mm.
And so that's what pulls you in the first place. Especially in an acoustic guitar show, which Holy Grail was a mix. But if you're at an acoustic guitar show and you're at a sea of spruce, like how the heck do you stand out in a sea of
Mm.
spruce tops, all with a dark fretboard,
Mm.
all with Goto 510 tuners, like everything is really much the same. How do you stand
Mhm.
out? And you do it through line and form. Every once
Mhm.
in a while, someone will identify themselves with texture, and Mishi has been
Mhm.
someone who's done that, where he uses gunpowder or something to finish his top instead of
Mhm. Mhm.
instead of a glossy finish. Um, yeah, so I think you did a good job of describing your guitar. Actually, many guitar makers don't, uh,
Mm.
but when you described your guitar as um, simple but sophisticated,
Mhm.
that's it. But there's enough unique features that um, instigate curiosity
Mhm.
and exploration. So you see it and you want to come and you say, oh, that's different. I wonder how different. And then
Mm.
you come in and you start to look closer, and then you say, oh, that's an interesting. I think everything that is not a full, we say, is a
Mhm.
cutaway. You bend away, whatever. The point is, that's an interesting way of approaching
Mm.
higher fret access.
Mhm.
We look at that. And then you look at the fine details. You get closer and closer.
Mhm.
And then I probably asked you if I could touch your guitar. You would
Yes.
have said yes,
Mhm.
because we're talking here together. I don't remember that well. What you would have, this is what would have happened.
Mhm.
And I would have reached in and I would have placed my hand in the neck pocket and plucked the A string with just my thumb.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I would feel your guitar move. And I know 98 to 99% of what I need to know
Mm.
from the feeling through my fingertips
Mhm.
with that. Because that comes from experience. That is, not everyone is that way. You have
Right.
to have played a lot of guitars to be able
Mhm.
to understand the movement of the
Mhm.
guitar so well that you don't have to pick it up necessarily. And
Yeah.
if that then was pleasing,
Mm.
right? So if I felt the energy of the guitar system fully engaged,
Mhm.
and that I didn't just feel a string moving and not much of the body or neck
Mhm.
moving, then I would have said, it's a lovely guitar. Well done. I
Mhm.
would have walked away. But I suspect I asked if I could pick up your guitar at that point.
Mhm.
And then I picked up your guitar and I began to play it. And so there are portions which you have to get through.
Mhm.
But the first thing is, in a room full of great guitars, how do you make them stop and want to
Mhm.
approach your guitar?
Mhm.
And so, I would like to understand a little bit more about your design process, because you say that the first guitar you made was already there, but you were building with Kathy for already 7 or 8 years at that
Mhm.
point in time, right?
Yes.
And so you'd obviously spend a lot of time thinking about it. And,
Mhm.
and do you sketch? Do you draw out? Did you make any sort of images in your mind? And had you patchworked or made newspaper
Ye-
clippings, so on and so forth?
Yeah, do the preliminary drawing and then put it on the board. And something that Kathy told me is you look at it until you don't find anything. So I would look at it day after day and then change a little bit here and there, and then to the point where, okay, well, I think this looks pretty good. So then at that point, I can sort of make the actual instruments But as I go
Yeah.
along, there's still things that I wanted to tweak because in 3D real life, there's other aspects of it that doesn't fully captured in the just the line drawing. So
Yeah.
then after that, you just started doing it. So, okay, well, you know what? From here, I could, if I change this and that, it could actually make it look better. So then all the small details and appointments that gets done in real life as I move along.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's interesting the consistency for you. So I guess let me finish that experience for those who are listening who might be interested in knowing more about your guitars.
Mm,
Once I played your guitar, I
mm,
realized that your guitar was full, clear, and articulate.
mm,
That your guitar actually has a percussive nature to it as well, which many do
mm,
not. Many guitars have a fundamental, but they don't have much of a spank.
mm,
And your guitar actually has a percussive spank to it,
mm,
which I find appealing
mm,
often. It's okay when it doesn't. It just
mm,
pushes you in a different direction,
mm,
at that point in time. But your guitars do also have a percussive spank, a give and take, which
mm,
told me that you probably are a decent guitar player yourself,
mm,
and that you're a musical guitar player because you understood. And anybody who really plays guitar and makes music wants that.
mm,
They would miss it, right? But there's a lot of guitar makers who are not. Um, they'll tell you they're not really musicians. They're
mm,
guitar makers,
mm,
but those who do play, they're not okay when an instrument doesn't speak
mm,
properly. When
mm.
they're done, you keep working on it,
Yeah.
right? And I've never heard Kathy play, but I've been told that Kathy's a good player also, and that
Mhm,
comes out in her guitars.
mhm,
Um, I've played her guitars, and they are good instruments, but I've not heard her play.
mhm,
So yeah, from that point in time, I understood you are a modern acoustic guitar maker,
mhm,
and that your instruments, you probably are related to modern players in the way you look at it. You're certainly not a bluegrasser. Your
mhm,
guitar would not please a bluegrass player,
mhm.
and that's okay. It's a different approach.
Yeah.
So you're making a very refined modern acoustic guitar, and the modern acoustic guitar, in my sense, is a curatorial sense,
Mhm,
has evolved out of both the Dreadnought and the Martin guitar and the
mhm,
Stratocaster.
mm,
And it's the Stratocaster part that most people don't understand. And so most modern acoustic guitar players
mhm.
are electric guitar players, including Tommy Emmanuel.
Yeah.
And you learn a certain amount of subtlety and nuance with electric guitar that you don't necessarily learn if you start by playing acoustic guitar.
Oh.
Now, we are a couple cycles down that now
Mm,
because there is so much music created by those guys who were electric guitar players who moved to acoustic,
mm.
right?
Yes.
There's so much music from the Holdsworths and the Tommy Emmanuels and the
Mhm,
Adam Millers and Manelli Jamals and so on and
mhm.
so forth. But if you ask most of these guys, you'll realize they were all progressive electric guitar players
Yeah.
who found their way towards acoustic.
Mm,
And so when you do that, you expect certain reaction from guitars. And that's where that spankiness comes from, because the Strat is a really
mm,
spanky guitar,
mhm,
right? That's where the funk part is. And
mhm,
Stevie Ray
mhm.
Vaughan in the
Yeah.
Stratocaster, that kind of
Mhm,
stuff is there. Um, and you also want the guitar to respond with an extremely light touch. Tommy
mhm,
Emmanuel's guitars are set up so low that most acoustic guitar players can't
mm.
make them not buzz. But if you're Australian and you grew up listening to Tommy, you'd know he was an electric guitar player. He's a
Mhm.
pop star in Australia,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so um, yeah, the modern acoustic guitar is a hybrid of the electric guitar
Mm.
and the Martin.
Mm.
And that's your guitars fall into that category, and then they differentiate themselves in style. And so here on a design tip for anyone listening, and you've all heard me say this before,
Mhm,
but Raymond Loewy said it best, so I quote him all the time. If
mhm,
you take two products that are equal in quality, equal function, and equal in price, which is what many acoustic guitar shows are,
mm,
everybody's at this really high level of quality, function, and price, they'll buy the better looking one.
mm.
which is why everyone competes with rosettes and miter joints.
Mm.
Once you get to that point.
Wow. Wow.
So, the reason that someone would buy your guitar versus Leo Buendia's guitar, Mishi's, or Brian Gallup, or whoever you want to talk about, usually comes down to now aesthetic. Because you all make wonderful instruments. And don't get me wrong, they're slightly different. So the player might also like your instrument a little more in the functional side of it. But let's face it, each one of you is probably capable of making a guitar that sounds like the other guy's guitar, right? Your mastery is there. So you differentiate by aesthetics.
Oh.
And you can tell an Isaac Jang guitar from across the room.
Thank you.
So
Wow.
there you go. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Makes me feel better about myself.
Oh, I mean, Isaac, what else is there to accomplish, man? You've climbed the mountain, you've stood on top, and you've been doing it long enough now. And your guitars aren't just bought; they're also by the resellers. They sell through on your guitars also. People are happy with them, and your name is, among the great guitar makers' names. Now, you're not quite legendary yet, but you're well on your way. I've told you, I expect you to be one of those guitar makers, and I also expect you to be an elder statesman when you're elder. Because I see you as still someone who's going to be taking care of the community, and I presume you'll be helping out the younger guitar makers and taking care of your community 20, 30 years from now the same way you are today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I feel like we're in good hands if that's the case.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will continue to strive for that.
Yeah. Well, keep aiming up, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
I will too. We'll see you at the next summit.
Yeah.
So, anything else, Mr. Zhang?
No. That's a nice way to wrap things up for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Isaac, I am very pleased to know you. I do believe that my life is better for having met Isaac Jang, and that you make our community and our world just a little bit better every day. And so I really appreciate that. That's a heartfelt.
Wow.
I'm not blowing sunshine here. You're doing great work as a person, and also as a guitar maker. And so thank you for building unique world-class instruments, making inspiring guitars, and being the kind of guy that people want to be around. You do indeed sow happiness, and I'm very thankful for knowing you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for being part of my life, and your whole family. It's a big part of my gratitude. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, Isaac, we're going to wrap up this part of Life with Strings Attached, but we're going to carry on for our listeners who follow us over on Patreon for the business of guitar. Just another sort of 3 to 5 minutes over there. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit about Isaac's unique perspective on how he runs his business, head on over to Patreon/thebusinessofguitar.com. That's patreon.com/thebusinessofguitar. And we'll see you there.
The super secret tray sauce.
Ciao for now. Bye. Thank you for watching and listening. You can find more episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts. And a special thanks to those who support us on Patreon. It's your support that enables us to do this work.